Hi, my name is Andy, and I'm here today to show you how to install deck railings. Now, you can go get kits that have all the pieces. You can hire people and pay way too much money, or you can get all the various pieces yourselves and stick it on yourself, just like I'm going to show you how to do today. Now, you will need a few things, as I'll show you here. First of all, you need work gloves. You need basics like pencils and tape measure. I've got this nice leveler that has a straight edge that helps. Drill and impact driver. Awesome. Rubber mallet for tapping things in. A circular saw, which would be very helpful, though a hand saw can work. What else we've got? 2x4s, of course. Now, of course, it'll be a lot longer than this, but you'll need to be cutting these, and then you'll want to use some of the spare pieces to help level out the bottom. The balusters themselves, these are 26-inch aluminum balusters. You can get them in bulk. We got the Decorators brand, but any of those should work. And along with those, you get the connector pieces. They look like this, and they should come with screws. What we'll do is we'll screw this into the 2x4, and then they'll slip on like that. That's how they stay stable. For the railings, we'll meet the deck posts. You want some sort of brackets. So we got these, they're Deca rails. They're just metal brackets, very simple, $1 each at Home Depot or so. There are these fancier ones that look like this. These, the U-shaped ones, you'll need these for the diagonal stair pieces, but these will work just fine for 2x4 railings that are flat. Also good to have your trusty workbench and then all the various pieces of wood. Now, after you've assembled your materials, the first thing you need to do is you need to cut your 2x4s. Be very, very careful that you don't cut too much early. What you do between your posts, you'll need to measure point to point. So if I measure from point to point, this one measures 56 and just over 3/4 inches. Now, depending on your brackets, you'll need to cut the piece to be a little bit smaller than that. With these pieces here, typically I found that when you put them on back to back on the wood, so it'll go like here and the wood will go here, these two pieces are about 3/8 of an inch wide, like that. So whatever you measure, try it, just cut off the extra and then make sure it fits. So I've already done that for these two pieces of wood here, and I'll show you between this post and this post, we measured 55 and 3/4 inches, and that was after cutting off for these pieces here. An easy way to make sure that your pieces fit after you cut them, take one piece. Now I've already done two, so it's okay. But you want to take the pieces and just kind of slide them in and make sure they're flush on one side. Take your other two pieces back to back and just kind of set them in there like that. You want just enough space so that there's wiggle room to get them in. You don't want it so that you're forcing them to squeeze by. And that right there is perfect for what we need. So next thing you need to do once you have your pieces cut, the 2x4s, stick them in the workbench so that the narrow side is up. What we need to do is measure where to drill or where to install these posts. Boom, boom, boom. They'll go boom, 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 up like that, as you can see over here on the one that we've already installed. Now, you always want to keep an equal distance spacing them. The recommendation is to put these 4.5 inches apart. And so what we'll do, right down the center of these 2x4s, we'll measure every 4.5 inches and we'll mark a spot with our pencil. And then what we do is we will install the connector pieces. As you can see here, it's a little tiny plastic round piece. and you simply screw in like that, put it down in the wood, and then the baluster itself will slip right over that. So now that we've got our pieces on our workbench, the next thing to do is to measure every 4.5 inches for the balusters. Now, I've double checked my measurements on my 2x4s, and they are exactly 56 inches long. So most instructions will say cut it in half and put your first baluster directly in the middle, and then measure out 4.5 inches from there. But you may want to double check that before you blindly do it. For this particular piece of wood, if we were to do every 4.5 inches, then what would happen is we would have a post directly at the 1-inch line, which would be a little bit awkward because it would be super close to the pillar, or to the deck post. So instead, what we're going to do is we're going to remove one of those, and that gives us an extra 4.5 divided by 2, which is 2.5 inches on each side. So instead of putting it at starting at the 1-inch mark, we can start at the 3.25 inch mark and measure every 4.5 inches from there. And that will give us a total of 11 balusters for this particular pillar, and it'll be about, just over 3 inches on each side, which will look a little bit better. Another thing you want to keep in mind is when you do these, it's good to have both pieces measured or set next to each other so you can verify that they are even on both sides. As well as when you make your marks, you can mark them at the same time so you know they are precisely in line. You wouldn't want crooked balusters. You want them to be straight. The next thing we're going to do, after we've measured the holes where to put the balusters, there are actually 12, not 11, I misspoke, I miscounted. What we need to do next is then put this bottom piece onto the deck posts. And to do that, you'll need to use some sort of bracket. As I mentioned before, for the straight ones, we're using these simple flat deco rail brackets. They simply go over the ends and we simply screw them on. So the beveled edge faces that so that the flat edge here will go against the post. They're pretty simple to install. I've already done it on the bottom one. And all you need is just a drill and an impact driver. You will want to use deck screws. Shoot, where are they? Oh, here they are. You want to use at least 2-inch weatherproof deck screws. This one here has been coated. As you can see, it's black. That's part of the waterproofing. These will go straight in. This one's actually 2 3/8 inches, I think, but 2 inches will be fine. The screw heads stick out a little bit, but it will be flush across the top so that there won't be any issue when we attach it to the wooden post. Now, you may be wondering, well, why am I going to attach this to the post before I put the connectors on? We tried it with putting the connectors on this piece first before attaching on this one over here. The problem was when we went to go drill the screws into these holes, those connectors got in the way. And so we tried it with putting the piece on first and then putting the connectors, and it worked much better. So that's how we found with these brackets was a better way to do it. So let's put this piece on now. It'll be on the bottom here, like this. Now you don't want it way on the bottom, you want it up a little bit. Now you may be wondering, how can you make sure it's always even and level? The trick you do is you want about 3 inches up or so. Grab 2 2x4s like this and simply put them on the bottom and they'll be your guide. If you do this consistently everywhere, it'll always line up correctly. So we'll put these down here. Be careful not to fall off the deck. And we'll rest these on top. And you can see, because of how I've measured, it works pretty swimmingly well. And so you just want to get it even on both sides. you can measure this, or you can just kind of visualize it. As you can see here, I've got it pretty much even. It's resting on there, so it'll be level. You can even use your leveler to make sure, and it's not perfect, but it's good enough. So what we'll do now is we'll take some more deck screws and just put them in with our impact driver. So now we've installed the bottom piece. Nice and sturdy. I've removed the other holder pieces. So what we're going to do next is we're going to install the connectors. As you're working, it may be easiest for you to kind of pre-assemble them. The screw goes inside like that, and so I've assembled about 5 or 6 here. I should have assembled 12, but I just wanted to show you this. This is a quick way to optimize, especially if you're working together. Now, for these connectors, the bit head is a square. I guess that makes it more secure. Cool, whatever, we'll go with it. So I have to have my appropriate bit on the end of my impact driver. We've already marked the places where all these things go. So we said they're 3.5 inches apart. And because the wood's so soft, I can just kind of push the screw in to get it started. Have our railing installed and we have the connectors in, we can put the balusters on. It's pretty simple. All you do, because the balusters are hollow, you simply just slip them on and make sure they go down. Boom and boom. It's as simple as that. If you want to, you can also put a little bit of caulking on the inside, 100% silicone, to keep it from wiggling or rattling too much. But when we put ours in over here, they didn't wiggle or rattle too bad, so we're like, we're not going to worry about it here. I also prepared the top railing. I installed all of the connectors here as well as the brackets on the end. And what we'll do is we will simply slip them over. Now, you need to be a little bit careful because all the pieces are not going to be straight up just the way they are, so you need to kind of jigger or shimmy them in and be a little bit careful when you do that. It really helps to have 2 people on this one. Now, the last bit to do that we have our top railing on is to secure it with the bracket. All we need to use are our deck screws again, as well as our impact driver. And so what I'll do is I'll do a loose one on the top and just kind of make sure it's in the middle, so that way everything is visually appealing, and then just right in. And I'll leave just a little bit of wiggle room so I can get the tops and bottoms everywhere else. So I'll do this one over here, and then I'll come and I'll line this one up as well, making sure it's in the middle. And as you can see, it's pretty much in line with this other one because of the height of the 26-inch balusters, as well as the 3 inches we use for the 2x4s on the bottom to make sure that everything's the same height. Works out quite nicely. And I'll leave just a little bit of room on that one, and then I'll do the bottoms. And there you have it. we installed our straight deck railings up above, and now we have to do the stairs. These stairs are a little bit more complicated because they're diagonal, and so all of your measurements change. Not to fear though, some basic techniques can help us out. First of all, in order to get your 2x4s in line, the easiest thing to do is just to simply rest them on your stair corners and line them up against the piece of pillar wood. You can draw a line straight there so you get the perfect angle match. Do this on the bottom as well as the top, and then cut along those lines. Secondly, you'll need new hardware in order to install these. Before, the little connector pieces were flat on the bottom, as you can see, and so they would rest like that. Unfortunately, if you put them flat on this 2x4, they would go diagonally, which is not what we want. Instead, you can see I've already installed diagonal pieces. Some kits will have a little diagonal piece you can put on the top of it, or they may have just single pieces. And the nice thing about that diagonal piece is you can just install it straight on like that. I've already taken the time to cut our beams as well as to install our connectors. This bottom one, you can see they're going straight up. This other one is the top one, and it needs to face the other way so that when we rotate that, it will be straight up and down for all of those pieces. You'll also need to be careful about the measuring distance. Previously on the flat ones, over there, the flat ones we spaced by 4.5 inches. If you were to simply draw 4.5 inches along the diagonal, the spacing would be even less. Why? Trigonometry. You're doing the hypotenuse and not the adjacent side. So in order to keep these about 4.5 inches spaced apart horizontally, on the 2x4s, you need to measure about 5.25 inches. Check based on your angles, do your trig, but for my case with the 7-Eleven stair run, I had to do about 5.25 inches, and that gives me a consistent, roughly, not perfect, but roughly 4.5 inches horizontal spacing. Finally, you also need a U-bracket. Before we'd use the flat brackets, which were cheaper and they got the job done, but for the diagonals, for the staircases, because it's diagonal, the flat bracket is not long enough. And so what you need to do is you need to get the U-bracket so the wood can rest in there on the bottom. As you can see, we've installed with this guy here. Finally, another thing, with the diagonals, it's more likely that the balusters won't line up. So to avoid that rattling that you might hear, put a little bit of caulk around your connector piece as you put the baluster on. 100% silicone clear caulk will do the job. You want it clear because you don't want to mess up the pretty color of your baluster. 100% silicone, so it's totally waterproof. With that, we have all the pieces we need to successfully install these railings.